So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. In this episode, we're going to take a look at iPhone 14 versus iPhone 13 and figure out which is going to be the best for you. Now, yesterday I unboxed the iPhone 14 and you can see the iPhone 13 right here looking quite similar, if not identical. This is the green model and this is the all new blue model, which I quite like. It's kind of like a lighter blue, kind of like the Sierra blue colorway. A lot of people do dig that. So let's talk about the first thing right away, and that is the bodies. So essentially there's only really one change here on the iPhone 14 versus the iPhone 13, and you could see it right down there. There is no SIM card tray right there for that phone. Now also, if we go ahead and bring it around to the top, you're gonna see it looks exactly the same. If we bring it over here to the backs, they do look just about the same. I did get a little bit close here and I did notice that the iPhone 14's cameras are slightly bigger. It's pretty hard to see, but overall, I think they're slightly, just ever so slightly bigger, those circles on the back. But it's very tough to see. You have to get them really close. Nobody in the world is going to notice that. Now here at the bottom, you'll see they also look identical. That's actually the wrong way. If we put it like that, you'll see actually perfectly identical. Same cutouts, same lightning ports. I mean, overall, it's just more of the same. Right here, you can see the antennas. That antenna looks a little bit bigger right there than the iPhone 13, but not a major change. Buttons in the same place as well. Overall, these phones feel identical. Even the notches are exactly the same. So basically, what I gotta say about these is that the iPhone 14 is only a hair bigger in terms of the weight. It's just a hair bigger. The iPhone 13 right here, just slightly heavier. But overall, I mean, same notch, same lightning port, same button placement. If you pick these up, you're not going to know which one is which unless you look at the back colors. They're basically identical. Now, when it comes to the Super Retina XDR OLED displays, these are also identical. The iPhone 14 actually has the same 6.1 inch 800 nit display down to the pixels, 460 ppi. It is identical. 60 hertz panels, they scroll at the same refresh. So literally there's going to be no major difference. There was a little bit of a delay there on the 13. iOS 16 has been giving me a little bit of bugs, but overall, I gotta say, they are identical displays. Like nothing is different. So if you scroll up right here to that brightness slider, you'll see they both hit a maximum 800 nits. And in terms of usable, there's a little bit more 1200 peak and things like that. But I gotta say, it literally does not matter whether you're going with the 13 or you're going with the 14 here. Neither one is going to perform better in display, and that's kind of a letdown for the 14 because the 14 you probably would have wanted to get a little bit better display refresh just to make it feel like a more worthy upgrade, especially if you're coming from the 14. But the good thing about this is that if you are deciding to get the iPhone 13 at a cheaper price point, which is going to be around $699, then you're going to be a lot happier that you're getting a same display as someone who just got the latest and greatest Apple iPhone 14. Now, the next thing that's also identical is the software experience. So because Apple's iOS is 16 on both, you're basically going to feel the same experience. Not only that, because the notches are in the same place, they don't have different designs, they are the same size, literally down to just about everything is exactly the same. Now, here's what's different though. In the iPhone 14, you have to hunt for it, but you just go over here. In video, you have a little action mode. I talked about that in unboxing, but other than that, the entire phone operates identical. So for that $100 savings, you're gonna get, one less year of software support though. So if you want an extra year, you pay that extra $100 for one more year of updates, but I don't even know if it's going to get one more year of updates because of this reason right here. They both do run the Apple A15 Bionic on both of them. However, Apple did upgrade the RAM to 6 gigabytes of RAM over here, which means that you probably will get, a little bit more software support just because it has more RAM to support that down the line. That's probably why they bumped the RAM up. But because you have that same A15 on both, you're gonna get literally the same performance when you do open up applications day to day. So for those of you who bought an iPhone, what was it, iPhone 13 from last year, you're not gonna feel like your phone got outdated. That's actually good for those of you who bought an iPhone 13 last year. But for those of you who are looking for performance jumps, besides that ability to hold a little bit more apps in the background, I really don't see a major reason to go to the 14, for that extra money. It's basically the same chip for cheaper. You also have the iPhone SE with the same chip. That's not a bad thing though. This chip is still faster than most Android devices on the market in terms of, at least synthetic benchmarks and stuff like that. However, some people argue that Apple doesn't really take advantage of it with the software, so it doesn't really matter. We're not going to get into that today. All I can tell you here is that these phones perform the same. Now, when it comes to the cameras, these are technically not the same. The iPhone 13 does have a little bit, doesn't have as better low light performance than the iPhone 14, which actually has a better aperture, which means that your low light performance is going to be a little bit better. That's not to say the photo results with good lighting aren't going to look the same, because they essentially do. I have noticed though that the iPhone 14 is definitely in some areas giving you a little bit sharper images, but the iPhone 13 is giving me a little bit more saturated images. I also tested out the front-facing camera earlier, and I found that the front-facing camera on the iPhone 14 is definitely a little bit better in terms of sharpness. It definitely sharpens up the image a little bit more than the iPhone 13, which is a little bit soft. But overall, I gotta say, you're not really gonna be jumping too much. What is good about the front-facing camera on the iPhone 14 though is you can do cinematic video on the front-facing camera. That's pretty cool if you're trying to match up that rear and the front. Over here, you can do it as well, but at the same time, the iPhone 14 can do this in 4K at 30. You can't do it in 4K at 30 over here for the 13. But what you can do on the 14 that you can't do on the iPhone 13 is get better low light selfies. That's going to matter a little bit more when you are talking about when you're taking pictures at night and stuff like that. The iPhone 14 will be a little bit better. So if you're into selfies and video, it's a hair better on the iPhone 14. I don't know if it's a whole $100 better, but it's definitely better than the 13, even if it's by a hair. Other than that, I couldn't see a major change when it comes to the actual photo quality. I took some samples side by side right here. Let me know what you think. Overall, I mean, these things look like they take the same photos just about on both phones. So you can see right here, cardboard, slightly different tinge to the cardboard color. I mean, this stuff is so minor. It's nothing. It really just, I did notice here that the iPhone 14 though did give me a little bit more accurate color, whereas the 13 contrasted it up a little bit. I was noticing that on some of my samples, that the iPhone 13 sometimes just gives you a little bit more punch in the color, whereas the 14 is a little bit more toned down, a little bit more like natural. So if you like natural photos, you'll probably like the 14's results a little bit more, but if you like that punch without having to edit, you'll like the iPhone 13. Now, battery life is going to be a bit better on the Apple iPhone 14 versus the Apple iPhone 13, and that's just because the cell is just physically a little bit larger in the iPhone 14 versus the 13, but you're still talking about two phones with pretty excellent battery life. They can get through a full day quite easily, and they have really good standby time. So this is one of the reasons why this phone is a good option still, even though it's the same. It has a really good battery life compared to something like a S22, for example, which wasn't really impressive in the battery life. So looking for a good phone, good battery life, the 14 is going to provide it, but so will the iPhone 13. So it's down to like, we're talking about a difference between maybe like 4%, 3% difference in the way of being better on the iPhone 14. So it's nearly identical. Both of them going to perform well. One little thing a lot of people don't talk about the iPhone 14 is it has a little bit better Bluetooth. That is 5.3, which is going to be more compatible with the upcoming AirPods, the AirPods Pro 2. I think those just got launched actually. Those are going to be, a little bit faster to connect. In addition to that, you'll get better audio quality and maybe just a little bit better reliability with Bluetooth versus the 5.0 on the iPhone 13. So just a little bit better Bluetooth performance. Is something small, but it's an experience thing where like day to day, you don't want to be dealing with no Bluetooth issues. The 14 will probably be a little bit better there. You also have the crash detection. This is something you don't have on the iPhone 13, and you should be able to alert SOS via satellite, coming in an update soon on the iPhone 14. So a couple safety features that are kind of important for a lot of people maybe, but again, these aren't going to be something I think people are just going to go out of their way to find the iPhone 14 just to get those features, but I had to mention them. They are something that is different. So that's pretty much going to wrap it up. Surprisingly, there's not much more to talk about between these two phones. So if you notice throughout this video, I had to hunt to find little eensy weensy things to make some content about, because the fact is the changes on this phone are teeny tiny. For now, I think it's still a really good option. I think they probably should have just dropped the iPhone 13 out of the lineup and just kept this one around. But overall, it's not a really big, innovative, big, major change, but it's still going to sell well. It's got some nice colors. It's a great phone overall. It's still an amazing design. I mean, you do have the squared edges. You have the nice diagonal cameras. I think it just gets a little bit overshadowed, or has this cloud over its head that Apple has basically done this already, this type of design with the iPhone 12, the iPhone 13. And when you keep seeing it over and over again, it just doesn't have that same specialness anymore. But that's only if you're coming from the perspective of somebody who's had that. You got to appreciate the fact that if somebody hasn't had an iPhone like this before, it's still a beautiful option in the lineup. For example, if a person just finally was able to pick up a new iPhone, they're coming from an older one, they're gonna absolutely love their new 14. Keep that in mind. But us techies, we like to compare it to like the pros and all the best stuff coming out. But at the end of the day, it's still an amazing option. It's just not a major upgrade over the 13, and that's just facts. So anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. If it was me, I probably would save the money, get the 13, and then upgrade when Apple does something majorly different. But if you really want this 14, you are going to get a better low light camera. You're going to get the extra GPU core, the extra RAM, the better front-facing camera, and maybe a certain color you want over the iPhone 13. But if you want that green, if you want that pink color, you still got to go with the 13. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Nick here. Be sure to be well, and peace.